Coffee has shaped entire economies, fueled revolutions, and in Rwanda, it's been the source of both exploitation and empowerment. Today, we're talking about tackling poverty through coffee, and the man leading the charge is Arthur Karuletwa. Arthur is a social entrepreneur with 20 years of experience using coffee and agriculture to uplift communities. Originally from Rwanda, he lived as a refugee in Uganda and Kenya before immigrating to the US in the 90s. In Rwanda, coffee is a symbol of a colonial oppression and economic exploitation. But today, Arthur is transforming it into a force for healing and empowerment. He's pioneered traceability programs that track coffee beans from farm to cup, giving farmers more control over their produce and their future. Arthur is now leading sustainability and impact at Chobani and at Le Colombe. Is that correct? Le Colombe, there we go. We're also joined by Ben Liebmann, the founder of Understory, specializing in media, entertainment, and hospitality. Ben has worked alongside Rene Redzepi at Noma, multiple times the best restaurant in the world. He's the executive producer of Omnivore, an 8-part culinary docuseries on Apple TV. Arthur's incredible story is featured on the coffee episode of Omnivore, and today we are diving deeper. Welcome to the show, Arthur Karuletwa and Ben Liebmann.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. As always, I am your host, Rowan Cook. We are live from the Melbourne International Coffee Expo this week. And as always, it's just coffee. Now, that's the name of our show, and we like to yell it because we kind of have a belief here of, we dive so deep into coffee and all the things. But, for us, we're like, we still want to have fun around it. And, at the end of the day, it's just coffee. But I think that kind of changes today. I think with Arthur being here, I think it's not just coffee. Arthur, can we please just start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself and your story?
Absolutely. No, thanks for having me. I think you captured, pretty much half of it as my past has really defined, what I do today. Probably most evidently what I'll do tomorrow and the day after that. It's all engrossed in coffee, just to amplify. Yes, it is just coffee and the mode of things, but it permeates a lot more than that. And so I've been in coffee, it's coming to 23 years now. I can't believe I'm saying that out loud. But it's also been an incredible journey and almost a blur because I say I'm blessed and cursed with what I call the 4 Ps. I started with a unquenchable, purpose to use coffee to fight poverty. Poverty as an endemic that for centuries has afflicted many, and that purpose turned into a profession, and the profession has taken me far and wide. It has allowed me to leverage different entities, different organizations, to will their mission into doing, the job of fighting poverty. And the last P that I circled around is an unquenchable passion. It's turned into a passion of mine, and every day seems like a blur. That what are we tackling today? And I know this endemic wheel of poverty may not stop moving in my lifetime, but I hope I make a dent in it.
Yeah, that is incredible. And it kind of just brings up you're doing so much. How do you continue to push yourself? Like, is it just that passion? Is it every day? Like, what kind of brings that desire out of you?
Yeah, I do know that, as a people, we're driven by something bigger than ourselves. And every day, and I don't take it for granted, every day I meet people hungry for that, sometimes unbeknownst to themselves, that they're looking for that thing that they can wake up every morning and not feel like they're going for a job, or they're doing a job. And that's the intersection of finding a purpose and a passion, I think, and I was both fortunate and unfortunate to a certain extent to find mine early.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the unfortunate part I say is because it was triggered by an unfortunate event.
And do you want to go into a bit more detail about that?
Yeah, I mean, when you have a front row seat, or at least lose, entire generations during a horrific genocide, something in your core is switched off or switched on. So it switched off for a while. Everything turned dark, both mentally and psychologically, and I couldn't wrap my arms around how humanity could get to that point. How brothers and sisters, neighbors, and friends could just exterminate one another. And while one group was targeting another, it still was humanity to humanity. And so, yeah, it turned dark for a while, and then thankfully, I saw through trying to drown my demons what exactly those demons looked like, and what their agenda was, and also more importantly, what the core issue was that they too were fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a crazy and incredible thing to go through, but to see the light coming through of it on the other side is truly remarkable. So I tip my hat to you. That's incredible. Now, you once said, I got into coffee because I hate coffee. Given Rwanda's complex and sometimes dark history with coffee, what does that statement mean to you?
Yeah, I did get into coffee because I had a vendetta with coffee. Like every product we consume, every thing that we build with our hands or we exploit as a people can be used as a force of good or a force of evil. Coffee was one of those in my home country that took the evil route, manifested by man, of course. And the history of coffee in my home country is that it was introduced by the German/Belgium colony in Rwanda in the early 1913s. And it was almost an enforced product. You had to grow coffee. So that was one of the 3 laws that the Belgians enforced in Rwanda. So whether you had a tiny little plot the size of your bedroom to whatever size, you had to find room to grow coffee. You take your food crops aside and find room for coffee. Didn't matter how big your plot was. So the second law that was enforced was you could not cut a tree down without permission. It didn't matter whether that tree was bringing in pests and diseases and infecting your food crops that you survive on. You could not cut a tree down. Remember, we don't eat coffee. So here's a product that you had to grow, could not cut down, but had to live off of. And then the third and one of the most debilitating laws was you could not consume coffee. Coffee was regarded as a Western medicinal product. And to enforce that habit or that belief, they used the power of storytelling. And they used the most renowned storyteller in the community, what is known as the scriber. And that scriber would, every coffee season, would take a shot of a mocha pot that was brought by the Belgians and was asked to take a sip of it just to make sure that they understand the dangers of caffeine to Rwandans. And as you must have it, the scriber would take a shot of that espresso, or almost espresso-like, coffee pot, and his heart would start to palpitate. And warning signals went out and permeated the entire community. And scribers wrote that as the Bible truth.
Wow.
Do not drink this beverage. It will kill you. So imagine that continuous story and myth going on. To this day, I'll meet 65, 68-year-old farmers who will reiterate that story to me and pass it on. So yes, I had a vendetta with coffee. I had you know, I had a reason to get to the bottom of changing that myth, that story. I knew that it also had incredible economic opportunity for producers, but post genocide, I also knew that it had another role to play, and that role was to help us reconcile, to come together just as you would over a cup of coffee with me at your local coffee shop.
Or right here on this podcast.
Or right here on this podcast, to essentially connect, having coffee as our centerpiece. I knew coffee could act as a centerpiece in growing communities around Rwanda and bring people who otherwise were not seeing eye to eye, justifiably so, to connect, to meet, to talk, to get to the bottom of what's different.
Now, it's interesting you talk about that connection because one of the things that you've brought up is this idea of faces over labels, right? Is that just related to the modern world, or does it have a connection to Rwanda's colonization and how coffee was treated back then?
I think it's both ways. We see it in the marketplace. We see it where coffee is produced as well. Faces over labels to me means get to know me and I dare you to hate me.
Yeah.
To dislike me. We have a lot of perceptions about each other, and they get engrossed in our minds and our hearts. But when we spend time with even, the harshest of our enemies, we do see a reflection of ourselves somewhere in them. And if we take the time to get to know them, then us, a lot of labels, a lot of marketable divisions and walls come down, within our faces. So I do honestly also believe that in the marketplace, we're bombarded with a lot of labels and certifications and signals and billboards that, yes, do define our thoughts about each other and about a product through the lens of an individual or a product that is grown in a hemisphere we've never been or can't even pronounce. So I just want to make sure that somebody in Australia, sitting at a cafe can connect with, a woman in Australia with 3 children can connect with a woman in Rwanda with 3 children, facing in the same daily tasks. And
well, I found it so interesting watching the Omnivore series when it was talking about when the coffee was being sent from Rwanda to Belgium. No one even in Belgium knew where it was coming from, the name, any of it. But then I look today and I'm like, some of it in a lot of cases isn't that different. Like it still hasn't changed that much in some effects. In specialty coffee, we're still getting a lot more, but a lot of consumers aren't getting that, the real face behind it and that. So I think there's a lot of change that we can make there. Mm-hmm. We are seeing though that many people are willing to pay a premium for coffee, yet producers are seeing just a small fraction of that. On top of that, they're the ones facing this increased risk of climate change and the ever-fluctuating market. What initiatives are you leading to improve traceability and ensure producers get their fair share?
Great question. The coffee trade is pretty archaic. It's been the same way for eons, and as many times as it falters or cracks, we find a way to patch it back together, and it continues in its unsustainable way. And unsustainable in the fact that you just mentioned, producers for a long time have not been able to come up for air to even meet their cost of production. Now, a little bit about coffee. There's 3 large countries that pretty much drive the supply in Colombia, Brazil, and in Vietnam. But the majority of coffee does come from smallholder farmers, some of the size of which I was expressing in Rwanda. And these smallholder farmers collectively account for a little over 60% of the global supply. It is these folks that essentially come up for air every 11% of the time over the last, say, 35 years. And over 70% of the time, they've been underwater. And so it's critical that initiatives and technologies like traceability help us get a true pulse and oscillation of the supply chain to understand where in the supply chain are we seeing the heartbeat not oscillate in a way that it should. And traceability is like taking a diagnosis of the human body, for example, if you equate that to the supply chain, and seeing where within all your organs and systems something is wrong. Because it's such a vast supply chain with many hands exchanging a product, sometimes it's hard to see where the problem is or where the leak is. And so some people just choose to say, it's too complex, just get me my coffee. And so I think traceability illuminates where the problem is in a way that we can now start to surgically figure things out. And this could essentially help us understand that, gosh, the system is broken, and gosh, we need to do better. And if we want coffee in the future, something has to change. And that is for farmers to not only meet their cost of production, but we get a premium for the quality we expect every day.
Yeah, I completely agree. And a question that I wanted to ask as we get maybe a little bit divisive on where this lands, where do you think you would place the responsibility for the biggest change coming in here? Is it amongst the roasters and the cafes to tell that story? Is it on the consumer to care more and to put more time into finding and understanding where their coffee is coming from?
I don't think it's one singular part of the supply chain responsibility. I love the saying that sustainability can endure through the sum of its parts. We are stronger through the sum of our parts, and everyone has to carry their weight. And it's a matter of education, information, desire to understand that ultimately we're all connected through the products we consume. And if you think you're not, then you're not part of the sum of our parts. And you quickly will realize that there's a disconnect in what you desire versus what you're willing to pay for.
Yes. Now, Ben, you decided to feature this story on Omnivore with Renee. What about Arthur's incredible story made you feel like this needs to be shared with the world? What stood out to you?
Well, you've just heard it.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, as I read that question, I'm like, I'm getting a pretty clear picture of why.
Yeah, I mean, we were really fortunate to first meet Arthur through the MAD Symposium, an annual gathering in Copenhagen of 500 the most inspiring minds from the food world, whether they be chefs, academics, scientists, farmers, that would come together to discuss the future of food. In 2017, we had published a book called You and I Eat the Same, which we had written with Chris Ying, an amazing friend of Arthur and mine, but a friend of the organisation and a journalist, which looked at, as the title explores, it was, almost a flippant way of saying that no matter what we eat, what food represents is what brings us together. And Arthur was very generous to share his story with Chris and allow us to publish that within the book. And then he came back the following year to talk at the symposium. And strange to talk about him as if he's not here, but I remember sitting in this circus tent on Copenhagen Harbour, and 500 chefs, that's a tough crowd. And you could have heard a pin drop. And I remember leaving that tent, calling my wife, we were living in Denmark at the time, and just saying, this will go on YouTube, you have to see this. So we're forever grateful for Arthur, but we're forever grateful for his generosity to share his story and his experience. And the story of Omnivore is really just a continuation of that. I first heard about it in 2013. I was in television at the time, and Renee and I had gotten to know one another, and he said to me, I've got this idea for a show, and it's that I want to look at the planet through the lens of food and the way that David Attenborough looks at it through the animal kingdom. I don't want to be on screen. I want to let others tell their stories in their languages. And obviously in a streaming landscape, you can do that now with subtitles. You don't need that heavy-handed narration, or you don't need that host with the microphone in the face. You can just let these stories unfold. And as, if fast forward to 2019, when we started the process of making this, coffee was always going to be an episode. Not only because we know the importance of it, but if you know Renee, you know the importance of coffee to him. And Arthur was always going to have to be a part of that. At least we hoped he would. And again, he was generous enough to say yes.
Yeah.
And I think, the way that episode unfolds is everything that we wanted it to be, which is really just to give it the space. I mean, even sharing the stage with him today, it kind of feels like second fiddle to just somebody who was, again, the word I keep coming back to is generosity.
Yeah.
Because, his experience is extraordinary. He doesn't have to share it with us, and he does with a hope that we will then take it and continue to elevate it, but also hopefully create the change that's so important to him, but really to all of us.
Yeah, well, there's only 3 of us on stage right now, and if you're playing second fiddle, I'm playing fourth. That's kind of where the numbers line up on that one there.
Yeah.
But I couldn't agree more. We're so blown away to have him here today chatting to us, and I've loved diving in and hearing more about your story. If you haven't watched the Omnivore episode, go and watch it. Go and watch the whole series. It's incredible how they dive into some of the most consumed foods in the world, and then the story behind them, the real story of how they get to us.
Well, it shows the interconnectivity of all of us.
Yes.
And that's, I think we felt, and when I say what I'm about to say, we stand on the shoulders of some extraordinary giants, whether it be Anthony Bourdain and Parts Unknown, or Dave Chang and Ugly Delicious, or Chef's Table. But we wanted to step away from the kitchen, and we wanted to step away from, the consumption of food, and actually look at the system that sits behind us. And coffee, each of those episodes is built around a single ingredient. And when we were putting those together, Matt Goulding, Renee would come up with almost these little taglines. We never published them, but these little taglines that kind of acted almost as if the mission of each episode. And coffee was the miracle of coffee. And, Arthur's heard me talk about it, but it's this idea of, if the average coffee consumer knew the journey that bean had taken and the hands that it had passed through, it's a miracle that it happens, and that it costs what it does, only to be, in the machine for 25 seconds and then disposed of. This thing should be as rarefied and as celebrated and as valued as, the most important wines, or increasingly a bottle of water or a glass. It is a miracle.
Yeah, when you watch each cherry being hand-picked, and you think about just a 1 kilo bag of coffee and each one of those beans individually getting taken, it is mind-blowing. And when coffee bean spills on the floor or gets thrown in the knockbox or whatever it is, like there should be this love and this craft behind how much work and the journey that coffee has come on. Leading out of that, from working on this series, did anything about your understanding or feeling towards the coffee industry change? Like, what was the biggest takeaway that you got after working on it?
I think just even more of an importance in, almost that last question you asked Arthur of whose responsibility is it? It's all of our responsibilities now. We were talking with somebody yesterday we were talking about the price of coffee. And that person said, it's up, but it will come back down. And Arthur and I looked at them and was like, will it?
Will it?
And should it?
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing too, is should it come down?
Yeah.
And it is the responsibility now of all of us to tell that story of actually why it shouldn't come down.
Yeah.
And, there's something Renee would always used to say, and I hope it's a safe space in terms of language, but that for food to be cheap, somewhere along the line, somebody or something is being fucked.
Mm-hmm.
The grower, the washer, the packer, the truck driver, the planet. And we've got to have this conversation of what is the real value of food, and in this instance, what is the real value of coffee? And it needs to be, again, the price I don't think will come back.
Yeah.
And as we talked about, it shouldn't come back. And how do we all play that part in communicating that message such that we value this thing for what it's really worth?
Yeah. And, I'm a bit ashamed to say that here in, Melbourne, I'm sure you're getting in Sydney, like every day there's a different article about the price of coffee and the going up and how shocking this is. And it's like the story needs to be flipped in the other way, that it's like the price needs to go up.
There's something, there are other factors there. Coffee's being used as a football.
Yes.
And the coffee industry is being used as a football because a lot of the voices behind that argument are also trying to use that to push down labor costs and minimum wages. And coffee's an easy one to point to because it is this thing that is part of our daily ritual.
You have every day.
And I think that's also our responsibility, if I can say it again, to call bullshit on it, to say, no, there is a conversation we have to have about coffee, but don't use it as a football for another agenda, which is, again, playing into a whole other range of factors of it. But you're right. I mean, I was in a cab from the airport 2 days ago and coffee came up with the driver. And he wasn't militant and saying, it's expensive, but he was commenting on it. And we started having this conversation of the why. And at the end of it, he said, I don't like it, but I don't question paying $4.50, $5 for a bottle of water at a 7-Eleven now. Yeah, this thing is worth more than that. Yeah. So even just some of those little conversations, if you could, maybe he talks to somebody now, and it's, I'd love to think that Omnivore has played a part in continuing that conversation. But even that's a drop in the ocean. We've all got to continue this conversation in our daily lives, in the media, wherever we can.
And in that, Arthur, we've got a lot of people in the coffee industry that listen to this, but also people who just love coffee. Coming out of this, what is one thing that they can do to help further this cause? What action can they take?
We owe them some information and education that's more transparent collectively so that they can be inspired to take action. It starts with that. No one's going to wake up, one day and just take an action unless they're inspired. And it's on us to do that. But inspiration comes from also two things, joy or fear. And when I mentioned earlier that we're all connected through the products we consume, let's take coffee, for instance, and just how connected we are because of coffee. Things that matter to people, say, during an election at the ballot box, right? So, people punch their fists in the air and complain and, bitter about, say, immigration. Well, if you double click on that and you see most of the people who are migrating, most of the displaced people who are coming from the producing South into the developed North, most percentage are in the business of agriculture. They're employed by agriculture. And if you double click on that, you'll find that agriculture's biggest mover economically is a cash crop. And if you dive into that, you'll find it's either cocoa, coffee, tea, or something else we consume every day. And you start to wonder, well, why are they coming up here then? Well, a desperate mind and a desperate man will do anything like swim across the Mediterranean to get to where he needs to go to feed his family. And until you're in those shoes, you can't really appreciate that the choice I make every day with the cup of coffee I drink every day has something to do with that. Take, for instance, the environment that we are complaining about and paying billions of dollars to help reduce the temperature for. Well, the biggest carbon sink is trees and vegetation. Yet also the biggest carbon emitter is the lack of trees and vegetation. So coffee is a bush, it's a tree, and it's growing off a tree. And every day, hundreds and thousands of farmers are cutting down trees because they can't economically make it. And the amount of carbon that is emitted when they do that is in the billions of tons. But if they grow coffee, it's also a carbon sink. It pulls carbon from the air, which mitigates our carbon sequestration issue. So there you go. Now we are at the ballot box complaining about the environment, but the choice of the cup of coffee you drink is connected to that immensely. I could go on and on and on about the sustainability development goals that are connected to coffee, from the socioeconomic issues of people, gender equity, 80-20 rule. 80% of the people who work in coffee are women that receive 20% of the value. But we at the ballot box complain about gender equity every day. Well, the cup of coffee you drink every day has a matter of fact to do that.
Incredible. I mean, I think everyone who's going to listen to this episode is going to take so much away from it. Hopefully want to dive in, and hopefully these words inspire that action coming for people listening today. Guys, thank you both for joining us here. Now, you're going to be doing some more talks while you're here. Are you able to give a little shout out of where you'll be?
We're going to be screening Omnivore soon here. Love for everybody to come up and check it out. We'll take Q&A. We've got the executive producer here, Ben, and the heart and mind and soul of the entire Epic view. It's really important to hear, how that evolved, like you heard a little bit of. But I think once you watch it, you'll have a lot more questions. And then the rise of espresso that La Marzocco featured as well should be showing and airing on the floor here. That would be incredible for people to understand. Just again, how migrants from Italy brought espresso to all over the world. And there we go again, the power of the migrant that connects us all in a way that we haven't appreciated yet.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, Arthur, it was your first time in Melbourne. I have to say, if you enjoy it and you're coming back, we want to have you back. We want to dive deeper once again. Ben, you're just up the coast.
I know, I'm just up the road.
We'll have to get you back on the show as well, because I have a feeling that you have many, many great stories that we could dive into deeper. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Where can everyone find you?
Look at the blue jacket I'm wearing, and look how tall he is. Just look for the two of us. We'll be around.
Are they on socials? Is there anything? Is there anyone you want to plug there?
Yeah, no, I'm at Chobani La Colombe, an incredible company, again, built by a migrant who left Turkey and went to New York with $20 in his pocket. Incredible inspiration. This man is the reason why I'm there, and Hamdi Ulukaya. His story, again, embodies what it is that gets me up every morning as well, because I know that there are other crazy people out there like me, and it feels good company. And acquiring a coffee company called La Colombe Coffee just made me feel right at home, to know that his vision and mission around people and the products that connects us will endure, and we're there to act as one of the members of the village.
Incredible. All right, thank you very much for joining us. That's the end of our episode here at Mice Today. We'll be back with more, and as always, it's just coffee.
Awesome.
Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing sponsors at Eco Barista. The reason I sound like this is because they got massages at our stand at Mice, and so I'm getting a massage while recording this message for you. They're the best sponsor of the pod that we could have had. They have the best eco products. This probably sounds really pornographic, but it's not. I'm just getting a massage. They have the best eco-friendly coffee products. They got coffee bags that you can design yourself. They got cups, they got iced coffee cups. They got everything you need. So make sure to support them because they support us. Head to ecobarista.com.au and get 15% off your first purchase when you sign up. Oh, mama, that's good.